This week on the WriterCon podcast.
Read everything?
Welcome to WriterCon, a gathering place for writers to share their knowledge about writing and the writing world. Your hosts are William Bernhardt, best-selling novelist and author of the Red Sneaker books on writing, and Renee Gutteridge, best-selling author of over 30 novels and screenplays.
Hello, writers. We are recording this podcast live from the WriterCon Cruise. Yes, those are real people all crowded together in the ship's library so we can bring you this podcast, but that's okay. We're all friends now, right?
Right, yes.
Renee couldn't sail with us on this cruise, but as a special treat today, I'm joined by the award-winning author of Red Rain and the Watman Files series, the one and only Lara Bernhardt. And as usual, our sound engineer, Jesse Ulrich, who is a far more experienced cruiser than we are. Jesse, is it true that you had a cool terry cloth robe waiting for you in your room?
Well, one, I don't know if it was terry cloth, and two, we had to ask
Silk?
for it, but a very thick, uncomfortable cotton, but it was free, so that was nice.
I did not get a robe. I know that part.
I know they're available for $25, so if you want one, you can have one.
Lara, this is your second cruise, I believe. Are you having a good time?
Yes, what's not to enjoy? I don't have to cook, I don't have to clean, and there's so much to do on the ship, and I'm surrounded by all these amazing people.
Yeah, lots of good writers, huh?
Yes.
What's your favorite part of the cruise?
Favorite part? Well, we're surrounded by beautiful sea, beautiful writers, and we're unplugged and just focusing on what we're most passionate about.
Yeah, great stuff. Our interview today will be with Cary Herwig, the author of many published books, including most recently the Army Brat Hauntings series. The second installment of that, The World Ends at the River, has just been published, but we're also going to talk to some of the cruise participants about the whole WriterCon Cruise experience because, you know, we'll be having another one next year, and you could be a part of it. And I hope you will. So we'll talk to Cary and others after the news segment and a brief word from our friends at Draft to Digital.
Hi, this is Kevin Tomlinson with Draft to Digital. Ebooks are amazing, but there's just something about having your book in print. That's why we built D2D Print. We take care of you with free layout templates and formatting, and we can convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound print cover automatically. Come check out D2D Print and all the cool tools we've built for you. Find out more at drafttodigital.com.
News story number one. You may remember last time we talked about James Patterson because he was objecting to being banned by a Florida school. His young adult series, Maximum Ride, was banned for no immediately apparent reason. But now he's lashing out against the New York Times and specifically their bestseller list. He is annoyed that his most recent nonfiction book, which is called Walk the Blue Line, it's a bunch of true stories by police officers, it did not make the New York Times bestseller list. Well, why aren't you just saying, darn, I guess I didn't make the list, maybe next time? Well, it's because according to the BookScan data, we've talked about BookScan before, just to avoid confusion, they're now called Circana, but it's the same thing. According to that data, Patterson says that his book actually outsold most of the books featured on the bestseller list. And so he wrote a letter to the New York Times to complain about this, and big surprise, they didn't run the letter, so he posted it on social media. Here's the key quote from this post. He said, "You suggest your process has statistical rigor, and it simply doesn't." End quote. Well, this is not exactly news. Everybody in the publishing industry, and especially self-published authors, are well aware that the New York Times list is, to put it politely, curated, meaning it's not driven by raw sales data. This is one reason why the recent loss of the USA Today bestseller list seemed like such a blow, because it did not curate. It went on raw sales data. It just told you this is what's selling. On the other hand, BookScan data is somewhat limited in scope too. It primarily reports print copies that are sold at retail outlets, so it does not include library sales or direct-to-consumer sales, much less Amazon sales, which can be somewhat significant. So, Laura, what is the biggest mystery here? That the New York Times bestseller list isn't entirely accurate, or that people in the industry keep referencing it even though they know it's not entirely accurate?
Well, I think that it's not well known to most readers, the way that this is compiled, curated, as you said. So that's a big tag on a book, and it draws readers in. You're a New York Times best-selling author. That is still something that you're going to use to promote yourself. I'd do the same thing. I wouldn't turn it down if I was a New York Times best-selling author. I like that. It means something to our readers, and it's still something that we would want to promote. So probably the biggest mystery is that they're still doing it this way, even though we've figured them out. I wish that they would bring it about.
If you go back far enough, you'll remember when the Harry Potter series was new, and the Times list was upset that 4 of their slots were taken up by Harry Potter books, so they created a separate children's books list and put all the books on it so they wouldn't have that, riffraff on their bestseller list. They've never covered self-published books. They've never covered Amazon sales. They don't cover, big box stores like, Target or Walmart and that sort of thing. So it is not scientifically accurate, and they do tend to promote the books from New York publishers that they like, except that didn't help James Patterson this time. Jesse, you're a sympathetic soul. Are you feeling sorry for James Patterson?
So you're asking me if I feel sorry.
The richest author in America.
A James Patterson book that isn't even fiction. It's just copied conversations of other people didn't make it on the New York Times list. No, I do not feel sorry for James Patterson.
Wow, I take back that whole "you're a sympathetic soul" thing. Forget it.
I bet one of his ghostwriters wrote this letter to the New York Times. So, tiniest violin for James Patterson.
Wow, we're getting down to it this time, aren't we? All right, news story number 2. This relates to a Twitter series. Some of you will be familiar with hashtag MSWL, which is short for manuscript wish list. It's a place where often agents or editors will go to indicate what they're looking for. What's been there this month? Agent Tia Melee wants trope-heavy romance. Somebody else wants awkward first date stories. Somebody else wants contemporary romance. Somebody else wants classic rom-coms. Somebody else wants romantic stories about monogamy. Somebody else wants swoony, be still my beating heart romance. Somebody else wants YA romance. And even the science fiction editor from Orbit Books says she's looking for the spiciest fantasy romance.
We've heard a lot about spicy romance on this cruise.
That's true too. Well, that's just because it's a cool cruise. Jesse, do you detect a pattern here?
People like romance.
Yeah, so are you going to start reading romances?
Here's the thing. Romance is in almost all fiction that I read. It's just not necessarily classified as such. So.
Well, that's true, but I think these people are looking for genre-specific category type
I will
romances.
certainly read young adult romance about Ultimate Frisbee. I think that'd be fun. I'm on board for that.
Laura, you not category romances, but you write women's fiction. Can you explain this phenomenon to us?
Maybe. I have a theory. Women's fiction, what I write is more serious, and we're actually looking at more serious issues. I think we've all been through a really rough 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think right now readers are very much wanting a happily ever after. They want to get away from more serious concerns because we are already faced with that every day. So I think people, like we said, we've always liked romance. People really enjoy that particular genre, but I think that happily ever after is what's getting everybody right now. They're looking for escape. They want to be amused and happy.
Sure.
And they want to be spicy.
And then,
As long as it's spicy.
and everyone's
yeah.
getting spicy lately. So
To be fair, there were a couple of requests for more YA fiction that didn't actually include the word romance, and somebody was looking for books that can be compared to the Yellow Jackets TV series, a young women stranded somewhere, plane crash, they went down somewhere, but it appears the romance is in high demand. News story number 3, mass firings at Hachette. Hachette Book Group, of course, is one of the big 5 publishers, and both Hachette and HarperCollins have both announced that they're offering voluntary severance packages to some of their employees, as the economic outlook for traditional publishers in 2023 remains sketchy. I'll use that word. A rep from HarperCollins told Publishers Weekly that, and I'm quoting here, as previously announced, we are working toward a 5% workforce reduction. And also the company has, quote, offered some groups a volunteer severance program as a part of that process.
I have a question. Is HarperCollins James Patterson's publisher?
No.
Okay, let's just check.
You're thinking they wouldn't have this problem? If
If only his book was on the New York Times bestseller list. I really wanted to fire these people, but different publishers, so it doesn't matter.
Or they'd have it worse, because I think
That's
he gets
also
a
true.
pretty good amount of royalties. And contrast that with the last news story, number 4. Draft to Digital is now adding print distribution. So possibly at the same time the traditional publishing seems to shrink, the indie publishing world seems to be growing. Draft to Digital, just to remind you in the interest of fairness, is a sponsor of this podcast. They're also the world's leading book publishing and distribution platform for independent authors and publishers. And they've been distributing or aggregating ebooks for a long time. In the last few years, they've been test driving their print program, and now it's ready to go. So the same people that are sending ebooks everywhere online that sells books just about can now handle your print books as well. They've already helped more than 9,000 authors distribute over 30,000 print titles. But compare that to overall, they've worked with 250,000 authors and publishers and have managed the production, distribution, of promotion of almost 1 million ebooks. Fewer than 10% of those ebooks, though, are actually being offered in print, and that's what Draft to Digital wants to change, because there are, in fact, still people, even young people, who are actually reading print books. Lara, given all this breaking advice, all of these stories that we've been talking about, all this information, what advice are you giving your writer friends and students?
I would never publish just an ebook. I would want that print book, and all my books are available everywhere. You're saying even young people want that? Actually, I just saw something that Gen Z, which is loving the retro feel of vinyl.
Right.
Now they like the retro feel of a book in their hands. So they are actually circling back and like having that hardcover or paperback in their hands. So I won't necessarily put everything in hardcover, but I'm going to have that print no matter what, and I want it everywhere.
Well, you mentioned vinyl. I read that last year, for the first time in many, many years, probably decades, vinyl actually outsold CDs in the music world. You see print books coming back that big?
It could, maybe, and probably not. I think ebooks are probably going to continue to hold on, but it depends. It depends on the author, and it depends. Definitely, we have certain population segments who prefer print. So having the younger generation coming up now and starting to buy some, we might see it edge a little bit out. I think ebooks will probably hold on to the majority share, but it's worth having those print books. I think so. Plus, then how else are you going to take them? How else are you going to give them to family or put them out for your mom? Or well, you got to have that print book.
Yeah, it looks better on the coffee table for sure, right? Jesse, I happen to know for a fact, because I've been working with her all week, that your wife is writing a book. So what are you going to tell her to do with it once it's finished?
Well, first of all, I don't tell her to do anything. I just advise her when asked.
Will you suggest?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, like, we have multiple versions of the same book on our bookshelves. Like, we have at least 5 different copies of The Lord of the Rings. Like, I like physical books even if I don't read from them, even though if I read on my Kindle. And as you know, I'm a fan of fantasy, and there's nothing better than like a really well-produced copy of a fantasy book. I might just go to it to look at the maps and read it on my Kindle. But I still like owning it. I still like I like the idea of physical books, even if reading from it is not my number one way of reading things. So I think books will sort of come back in a more sort of retro sort of way. And it might be more that there's less of sort of the mass-produced paperbacks and more of like the really cool-looking hardbacks. So
it's like it's like shopping for jewelry at Tiffany's. You'll pay more, but you got something cool.
I don't know about you, but have you ever enjoyed reading one of those like mass-produced paperbacks where the font is so small that you'd like hold it right here? I've never once liked one of those. Like you can't even fold it, open up the entire way. Right. I hate it.
And where's the button where you can, enlarge the text so that I can read it?
Yeah.
All right, Jesse, we got some people that I really want to talk to, so cue up the music. Cary Herwig, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for asking me.
All right, traditional first question that every guest gets stuck with. If you could give authors one piece of advice, and I bet you could give a lot, but if you had to narrow it down to one piece of advice, what would it be?
Read everything, all kinds of fiction, all genres. Every type of book has something you can learn from.
Fantastic.
Excellent. What inspired you to start writing in the first place?
I just love to read, and I just thought maybe I would try it. I'm one of those late bloomers. I didn't start writing really seriously until I was in my 40s.
I would argue you had more to say then. I think it's never too late.
That's probably true.
Well, let's talk about those, because I mentioned earlier the Army Brat Haunting books that you're doing now, but what was your first book? First one that was published?
Science fiction.
Really?
Yeah, it was called Hiroshi. And
what's that word again?
Hiroshi.
How do you spell that? Just in case somebody...
Iroshi.
Okay, so how'd that go?
It did well. It sold through, and then they asked for 2 more books. This was before you always got a 3-book contract.
Right.
And it sold pretty well, so I stayed with the publisher for 6 books altogether.
And then what, took a break, or?
Yes, I decided to go back to school and get a master's degree, and then I got a job, and I had to work towards tenure, and I was doing all this other writing, which is pretty dull.
Life.
Nothing like fiction.
Yeah, life gets in the way, doesn't it?
It does.
But now you're writing the Army Brat Haunting series, yes?
Mm-hmm.
What sparked that idea? How did that come about?
Well, I've always thought I kind of lived an interesting life as an Army brat, moving around different schools, and I sort of wanted to leave something for, I don't have children, but I have my nieces and nephews, and wanted them to know what it was like for my sister and me to grow up. So I thought, well, I'll just write this series of about Vivian and put in some ghosts for some added information. I did never see a ghost, but I thought that would make it kind of fun.
Excellent. Well, we both write about ghosts. I also have supernatural suspense series. What do you think brings readers to this? What's the appeal? Why do people want to read these supernatural suspense books?
I think a lot of people want to believe in ghosts. I've had a couple of things where, in an old building once, I thought I saw one out of the corner of my eye. I never did know what it was, but I think everybody wants to know, do they exist? Are they real? Did I really see one the other day when I was walking down the street? This kind of thing. It's mysterious.
I think so too. I've had people who, and I love this, I love getting connection with my readers, and I will have people very hesitantly ask, you write about this? Do you actually believe in it? And when I tell them I'm open to the idea of it, I love that then they feel comfortable sharing experiences with me that they've had, they found kind of inexplicable, something that made them wonder, is there something after this life?
Right.
Is there something that comes
exactly.
next? Very cool.
All right, so I think there may be some people listening, and I know there are some people in this room who are interested in writing, the writing process. So let's talk about that for just a minute. Are you a pantser or a planner?
Oh, I'm a pantser. I once read one of the famous authors, I can't remember now who it was, who said she writes a book to find out how it ends. And that's what I do.
Really?
Interesting. Okay, so what does your writing day look like? What's your process? Walk us through that.
Well, I'm retired now from a real job, so I get up late.
Okay.
And I go to the computer and start looking through my media, social media, and that kind of gets me focused in on the computer and so on. And then I start writing, and I write 2 or 3 hours. And then the rest of the day, I will try to do some marketing stuff and promotion. But I find, because I wrote in the evenings before and had a limited amount of time because I had a full-time job, I can't write more than about 3 hours at the most.
So do you ever find that you circle back in the evening? Do you find that part of you still feels like that's your actual writing time?
No, not really.
So after you've got it down, you're done for the day. Okay.
Unless I have a really brilliant idea at dinner time and I want to go in and add it to the book or whatever.
Sure.
Where do you find your inspiration? Or let me ask that differently. Where do your characters come from?
Well, that's a good one. Of course, Vivian and her sister, Lauren, kind of come from just being my sister and me, you know.
What? You put elements of yourself in your characters?
Oh, every once in a while, yeah. I did have someone say that Hiroshi, who was the main character in my first 3 books, was me wanting to be a warrior woman, which I wouldn't mind being a warrior woman, but that was not my goal. I always do women as my main characters. I know more about being a woman. And I think I want to give strong women characters to people who want to read about what it's possible and that women can do almost anything they want to.
Nice. So you've been writing for, dare I ask how long? It's been a little while?
Probably 35, 40 years.
It's been a while. Okay. So what have you picked up along the way that you think you could pass along? Like, what kind of good tips have you found that you could pass along for others?
I think one of the most important things for me, I realize, what works for me does not work for everyone. But I think two of the most important things is finding a place to write and always write there. Because when you sit down, you know what you're there for. And the time, always write at the same time. Because your mind is used to this, it gets used to this. And when you sit down and it's 10 o'clock in the morning, it's time, and you just sort of fall right into the path of doing the writing for the day.
Nice.
Cool.
And I do write every day.
Yeah. One last question. What's next? What are you working on next?
Oh, I've already finished the drafting of the next 2 Army Brat Hauntings. So those 2 books are just about done.
Terrific series.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And I'm working on a thriller series, which you all have helped me with over this cruise, which has been wonderful. And another strong woman character who kind of comes out of some weaknesses and is just has to defend herself and take care of herself. And it takes place in D.C. And since I was an archivist, she's an archivist. And she does congressional papers for congressmen and senators.
Sounds terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for asking me again.
Right. The cruise is about to end, but I would be remiss if I did not mention that WriterCon, the annual conference, happens every Labor Day weekend. This year that's September 1 through 4th in Oklahoma City. We've got more than 60 presenters lined up as I speak, probably more by the time the conference happens. This is the best roster of agents we have ever had, including movie, TV agents and publishers and much more. Every year we have, I'm pleased to say, successfully helped connect writers with agents. And this year we're kind of doubling down on that and trying some new things, trying to innovate a little bit rather than simply imitating what people have been doing for 50 years. And if you register now, you can take advantage of the early bird prices, so why wait? If you want more information about it, visit our website, which of course is WriterCon.com. And you can subscribe to the WriterCon newsletter, which is free. You can join the WriterCon Facebook group. Information about all of those things will be in the show notes for this podcast, all right? Until next time, keep writing. And remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. See you next time, all right?